Hi there, guys. It's Bob again, and I've got somebody we've had on the show a couple of times now, and this is part 3. That's how much stuff this man knows. So welcome to the Highway podcast, and my not new guest, my guest today is Justin Reeks, part 3. Now, that's not your name, is it? Justin Reeks, part 3. But you do have a middle name, don't you?
No.
Right. So we left the end of part 2. We left the door open a little bit on why you left the doors, actually, and we were going to talk in more detail about why you give up the doors, your interest in self-protection. I know that you're an avid meditator. You're the director of your own engineering company. There's still a lot more stuff that we haven't, and of course you're still coaching and teaching Muay Thai. So
it's surprising how. I mean, I never thought we'd make one podcast, let alone 3. And it's surprising how much. I use the term knowledge loosely, but it's surprising how much I've got to say. You know,
it's 35 years. 35 years in the martial arts. You know, it's more than 35 years actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's 35 years we've known each other. So because you've trained in karate and jiu-jitsu as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
So you know that's stuff we really haven't explored. But we were talking earlier, weren't we, about you might be a black belt in these disciplines, but are you anymore? You know?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, black belt in jiu-jitsu, it sounds great. Am I still a black belt standard? I mean, I wouldn't let a black belt throw me now. I'd probably smack him in the gob first, but I wouldn't let him throw me because my break fall wouldn't be good enough to survive the standard required.
Yeah.
Am I a black belt in karate still? No, because I've probably forgotten half of what I was taught because I haven't practiced it for so long.
Yeah.
So I've achieved these standards. The only one I still practice and religiously is the Muay Thai.
I'll tell you what, it's a funny thing, because I got a black belt in karate many years ago as well. You know, that's what I started off in, and I remember I got my black belt along with some other guys, and they continued to come to the class but stopped training once they got their black belt. And I used to think just what you've said actually, which is, are they still black belts then? Because they've given up. It's almost like they've got their black belt, that's it. That's when the training stops. But my karate instructor said, no, this is when your training really starts.
That's exactly, going back to Johnny Wilkes, that's exactly what he said to me. Basically, it's like passing your driving test. Learning how to drive, they teach you when you're learning, they teach you how to pass a test. They don't teach you how to drive.
That's
right.
That
moment you're in the car on your own. And It's the same with martial arts. They'll teach you how to get your grade. Once you've got it, that's when you start learning.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in that. I've learned so much more after becoming a black belt in different disciplines. And I've trained at high grades in most martial arts, but you tend to learn so much more afterwards.
Oh, yeah. And that's, I think a lot of people don't get that. Because I remember somebody saying to me, oh, now that you got your black belt, are you going to do something else? You know, like, okay. It's almost like saying, right, I've read that book.
I've learned everything I can in that subject. No.
I'll just leave it. But in fact, I don't know, you're probably the same. I'll read a book and then I'll go back to it and then go back to it and go back to it because you get so much more out of it. The first reading is about establishing it in your head. And the second reading, you go, oh, it's like seeing a film the second time. You go, I didn't see that the first time.
Absolutely.
It's the same with martial arts in many respects, I think. Probably not a best analogy, films and books. But anyway, you could hit somebody with a book or poke the corner of it in their eye. But that's self-protection. So you got your black belts in other disciplines and then moved in, obviously into Thai boxing. And we know from the first episodes now, we're going to call it, we're going to be into the 5th series by next year.
Yeah, they'd be sick of the sight of me.
Uh, and the first episode, you know, you talked about your training in Thailand and fighting and the number of fights you had, your battle with Yogi, you know. That sounds terrible, but listen to episode 1 if you don't know what we're talking about. But
Yogi was a tremendous fighter. He's a tremendous boxer, really good.
And you had a couple of battles.
And Andy Newell as well. Had a few.
Oh, Andy, yeah. Of course, Andy Newell's down in, he lives down south somewhere now.
He was a tremendous Thai boxer. Absolutely. It was good.
And he was one of the first ones to be featured on TV, I think.
Yeah, it was his fight was an A-class fight. I think we fought in Birmingham, actually. And they were doing a documentary because basically he'd sold his worldly possessions to save up enough money to go to Thailand for a year. And they were doing a documentary on him. And it just so happened that mine and his fight was filmed for the documentary.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I don't know if it ever came to.
No, it did. I believe it was on. I've got to get in touch with Andy Newell to see if he wants to do a podcast because
that'd be fascinating.
Really, from Manchester to Thailand, and now he's down south somewhere with all the English people. You know, I think he's not too far from me. Actually, I think it's something. I don't know. I think it's something like Milton Keynes down that way. But we'll talk about him another time. I think I'll actually speak to him and get the SP. But he was a great fighter. He was.
Tremendous.
Wasn't he?
Real tough opponent.
Yeah.
Real. You know, some of the toughest fights I've had.
Yeah.
But they were for titles, so you expect tough fights.
And of course, he was fighting out of Sitsiam camp and out of the British Thai Boxing Council at the time.
Yeah.
And the standards were always very high. I remember one instructor saying to me, and I can't name him, obviously, I think the standards are far too high in the British Thai Boxing Council. Oh, shit. Okay, get out my car. I can't believe you just said that. But anyway, so standards, yeah. So let's talk about standards then. And the standards of the fights now compared to back then. Do you think there's a difference, or do you think
massively.
It's the same? Or
like I said, there's so many unscrupulous promoters out there, and they will stick anyone on a bill just to put bums on seats. And when I was fighting, there was always respect amongst the fighters, always.
Yeah.
There was never this pushing and shoving at weigh-ins and things like that. I mean, I've actually seen somebody now recently who headbutt his opponent at a weigh-in, stand for a camera, face to face, and he actually stuck the head on his opponent. You know, that'd be bad. You know, and but it was just bravado to sell tickets. You know?
Do you think this is partly due to the UFC, the MMA type thing?
Absolutely, it's the WWE coming into it. It's
all of that showmanship and
and it is. I mean. You respected your fighter before, during, and after the match, you know. And there was always, I mean, some fights I'd clearly won, didn't get the result, but the fights I would come across, I didn't win. Now we all know we won that. Shake hands. Yeah, it's not your fault. It's the judges. You know, you can't win them all. And be very humble, very gracious in victory, and humble in, you know, and in defeat as well. It was that sort of respect. Because you had to earn the right to get anyone who got in the ring deserved a medal in my book in those days.
Yeah. No.
And nowadays anyone can get in the ring. You know, it's still a tough old place to be.
Yeah.
It's certainly the standard is very diluted compared to what it was.
What would you prefer to see? Just A-class fights? You know what my response would be. Or do you quite like the idea of having A, B, C, and now of course N-class?
I mean, N-class is just a interclub with decision.
Yeah, that's all it is, isn't it?
And I think that should be brought in. I think that's a good thing for interclubs, not just for the fighters and the people taking part. Because I know people. I've helped out all around Wales, and obviously up with yourself, helping out in interclubs. And you give your time up, and you sort of ref them because it's a learning curve for them. Yeah. Not just to deal with the nerves of being watched. They're watching them. They're sparring with somebody else. It's a good stepping stone into it, but it's dealing with the officials as well. So I think with the interclubs now is to possibly start to train the next generation of judges, the next generation of referees, to get them involved. I mean, what I do with my boys in sparring, is you four are going to spar against you four. When he's in the ring, you three are the cornermen. So you watch for his successes and you watch for his weaknesses. And then when they come back, they only do 2 rounds with the same person and then jump out. The next people jump in, they do 2 rounds. So they do 1 round where they'll test each other, go back to the corner, get instruction. And I found that has helped the fighters read a fight, because not everyone can read a fight, you know.
No, absolutely.
I know coaches that can't, you know.
Yeah, well, we talked about that in part 2.
Yeah, we talked about that. and again, you know, Lee Stinchmore, for you know, to his credit, he recognized that was an area of weakness. How can I improve on this? You can improve on this by doing this, this, and this. And he executed it perfectly and became a top cornerman as well as a top coach. You know, he knew.
Who was that?
Lee Stingy.
Oh, Stingy. Oh, Lee Stinchmore. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Well, Lee knew that he needed to learn certain things, and then he took it on the chin and got on with it, didn't he?
Yeah, and when I approached him, I said, "This, you were giving the terrible advice in that corner, man. That could have cost your fight or that fight." And he's like, "I know, I need help. Can you help me?" Yeah, and luckily I had the experience to pass on to him. Yeah. But he was humble enough to listen. Right, that's amazing. Right, thank you very much, and run with it. You know,
and that's a good trait to have as a teacher as well.
Absolutely, I'm a big believer in that. And everyone can learn off everyone. I'm still learning now, and we've been doing it forever.
Oh yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I constantly try to update my knowledge base and my skills, and obviously now, because I can barely use my legs anymore because of arthritis, because of Thai boxing, I spend more time now thinking about, you know, what's going on psychologically with the fighters, you know, and how to help them deal with psychological problems. But of course, as a teacher of martial arts, you'll find yourself not just, because you haven't got, you know, in a class, a typical class, they're not all fighters, are they? So you've still got people who come to you, and your job is to help them build awareness and confidence and so on. And I know we've talked about that, and you've got some thoughts on, you know, on not just building awareness, but how important that actually is for day-to-day life.
Absolutely. It's in every situation, whether you're in a class training, whether you're sparring, whether you're fighting, whether you're in the pub socially, or whether you're working the door. It's about keeping yourself with constant awareness, constant vigilance.
Yeah.
And it's about tuning into your environment. You know, like you said, we had a conversation before. I've seen people out running, earphones in, especially nowadays in age in this COVID climate.
Yeah.
And the more people are out doing this exercise, and they got the earplugs in, and you're like, I'm looking at them, and from a self-protection point of view, I'm thinking, well, you've at least got an MP3 player on you. 9 times out of 10, it's a smartphone. And they're running, they're oblivious. I run past people and they jump and squeal. And it's not just the girls, it's the boys as well. Frighten everybody because they haven't heard me come in. And it's absolutely ridiculous. From a self-protection point of view, they're oblivious. And you've got these mobile phone zombies. And I've actually done it to a friend of mine. He's walking along like this. I'm running towards him. I think, yeah, I'm seeing me as I'm going close. It's going, gunk, taking the phone out of his hand. By the time he's turned around, I'm 50 foot away. Yeah. And he shouted, and I'm another 50 foot away, and I'm laughing. I go, your phone, you absolute tool. And he's like, oh, yeah, I know.
No, people are doing it all the time. I mean, I say to my students after they've done the self-protection course, and I'm sure you've done the same thing, I'll say, when you leave the gym tonight or today, and we'll finish the course, just go out and see how many people out there you would be able to mug now. Because once you build your level of awareness up, you put yourself in a position where you can really switch on to who is actually a soft target, you know, and there's soft targets everywhere. I see them just walking past my house with their dogs. They're on their phone, or they've got their, as you say, you know, and you see them with the wireless things, and you know they've got an expensive phone if they've got wireless, wireless headphones on. So you think, okay, they've got an iPhone, they've got an 11, you know, and the criminals have got a heightened sense of awareness towards a weak target. That's what they do. They have a nose for it. They go, that's a soft target. I'll get him.
The same as we do. The same as we're like, you know, you go into a bar, go into a building, you check your exits, you do your drills, and the same as you're walking along and you do your walking commentary and you're to yourself.
Yeah.
You see these soft targets, and if I can see it, any criminal can see it. You're not. They're tuned in the same. That's their bread and butter.
That's how they do it.
I'm having a smartphone at the end of this jog. All I got to do is wait by ear, and someone's going to come past.
Yeah, and it's true. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, you were talking about when you go into a pub and, you know, you'll check the exits and entrances just as a matter of course. And that's not just because you're a doorman, is it? It's because actually it's good to know that. And a student said to me about this phenomenon when we went to the pub once, university. And I'd never been in this pub in Selly Oak before. So I went out the back to see where the toilets were, but actually I was looking for the exits. And they were all taking the mickey, saying, "Oh, typical old man, you need to go to the loo." And I'm thinking, you don't know what I'm doing, actually. I'm actually looking at, oh, I can get out here. And I was talking to them about it, and they said, "Well, that's pointless, isn't it?" I said, "All right, let's not imagine a gunman's going to run in and burst fire into the room, and I know where to go. What if the place catches fire? Do you know how to get out of here?" And they're like, and that's when the head goes like, where's the fire exits there? Yeah, but there is another one down there and another one there. And they're like, oh,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's
usually the fire, if a fire breaks out, I always use that as an example rather than, because that's more likely to happen.
Of course it is, yeah.
There's a fire exit, what if the fire breaks out there? And this is what, everyone's running this way.
Yeah. Well, a mate of mine, actually, him and his missus used it really effectively because they were in a pub in Birmingham. This is going back, 20 years ago now. And the Outlaws were in there, and there were some Hells Angels were in there. So, of course, two rival bike clubs. And the place literally kicked off. So they couldn't get out. Everybody's trying to get out the front doors because that's the way they'd come in. Of course, my two students knew exactly where the back door of the pub was, into the beer garden and out over the back door. And that's how they got out of it. But there were lots of people injured that night.
I can imagine.
And they came out and went around the front and saw just a mess. The police were turning up. And it was like a massive, 30, 40 man brawl going on with innocent people obviously being injured as well.
Absolutely.
If they hadn't,
that's a frightening thing as a doorman, having a brawl kick off that many people. When you say it's a 30-man brawl, it doesn't sound many people. But when you've got 30 people fighting, and there's collateral damage. I mean, we had it once when I was working. We had two football teams in Cumbrian. We had Cumbrian Town, Cumbrian Celtic, and everyone knew each other, and they'd all play for each other's teams as well. And the rule was, if whoever came in first, the second team didn't come in. And that was just basic.
Oh yeah, you said, and the whole thing kicked off, didn't it?
Absolutely, it went pear-shaped because, unfortunately, the landlord, pub I worked in Cumbrian, I worked there probably 10 years. I probably had doorman there for seven or 8 of those years. So then they were the rules, if whoever got in first, they would drink and the other team wouldn't be allowed in until they left, and 9 times out of 10, they would go away gracefully. But I was on the door one night and the owner said, "Oh, no, I'd be fine. I know them all. I used to coach them." And I'm like, oh. So against my wishes, and he was one of those owners. He would always try and get involved, but always after the immediate danger is over, he would always come out and then 9 times out of 10, stoke it back up, coming out and finger wagging and, get back inside. You don't keep a dog and bag yourself. It's off.
No.
So anyways, he let these in and within half hour, it had gone up. And luckily we had I think we had 4 boys. We used to have 2 boys on the front door. The pub was a U-shaped pub, so there's a couple of blind spots. So you'd have 1 guy up on the dance floor and 1 boy floating. And obviously we're all in communication with each other. So as it kicks off, the boy that's on the dance floor has come down. He's come running down. He is white because this thing has gone royally up in the air. And he didn't know what to do. He panicked. I said, "Right, calm down." I said, "Get everyone from there over the other side." So we literally split the pub, get the innocent people out. We had 1 boy on the door, and luckily I was working with a ex-military guy. He was 6'2", muscles in his spit, ex-marine. And even he was like, "What do we do?" I said, "Right." I said, 2-man snatch and grab team. I said, anyone comes around, we'll grab them. You on the door, you open the door, we chuck them out. And that's what we did. It took us about 10 minutes, but as they were coming around, grab one. And again, we always sort of worked in 2-man teams because that's obviously safer for us as doormen, but it's also safer for the individual because then you can use minimal force. When you've got someone, when it's 1-to-1, you've probably got to twist them up a little bit tighter to make them more compliant.
That's it, yeah.
But, that's when it's gone pear-shaped. I'll talk about the psychological, dealing with it psychologically in a minute. So we were grabbing these, and it took about 10 minutes. We got all 30 of them out. So they're outside, they're throwing patio tables over, they're fighting each other. And they're all like, "What do we do now?" I said, "Watch this." Lock the door, phone the police. Police turned up, locked them all up. I mean, fair play. Over the next 2 weeks, every single one of them come back and apologise. I mean, by Monday morning, I think the landlady thought she died because she had so many flowers from these guys. So they knew they were in the wrong. But again, it was all drug related.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is what happens. So you came off the doors eventually.
Yeah,
so,
I got a bit despondent with it.
because I know, I'll tell you why I'm asking, because I know a lot of lads who, and I still know them, and they're still dormant. They're in their 50s, and they're like, every year they're going to give it up. You know what I mean? And it's not, and to be honest, for some of them, it's not actually about making money. It's actually they get a buzz from it. There's something about being a doorman, you know? So,
But those sort of doormen, and I've worked with those guys. You know, guys, they were in their 50s, elite 50s. But then they're always the last of the fight. But they still like to stand on the front of the door. They and they've got respect from people because they're known. But they're more often than not, they're living off reputation rather than the fact that they can still do the job. You know, it's again, it's the same as fighting. It's a young man's game.
Yeah.
You know, yes, experience will get you through a few sticky situations, but then there's going to be that time where you're going to have to walk the walk, and when you're 50 plus,
it's much harder.
It's
especially when they're out of shape, they've not trained.
These guys gave up training. They probably played rugby. Some of them did martial arts, but they haven't trained since their 30s. These guys are 20, 25 years without training.
Yeah,
and they're puffing just walking up steps.
That's right.
Survival of the fittest.
But you decided in your prime to give up, right? After how many years? 10 years, was it?
15 years on the door.
15 years, yeah. Oh, you were head doorman for 7 years, weren't you?
It was about 7 or 8 years. I worked in one pub. I worked around the sort of South Wales valleys. Worked in sort of.
Describe, right, for people who don't know Cwmbran, how would you describe Cwmbran?
Cwmbran is a relatively new town. It was a couple of little hamlets, villages that were pulled together in the 1950s, and they built this one big shopping centre. I think it's only two of the biggest privately owned shopping centres in Britain. I think the second is Dronfield in Sheffield. And that really pulled Cwmbran together. So Cwmbran's probably got 65,000 people living there, and it's expanding now. It really is expanding. They're building houses absolutely everywhere at the moment. So it was at the time when the pub I was working at was probably one of the first pubs in the area that needed door staff. It was that busy. I mean, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it was like a disco pub as such. So Friday, Saturday, they'd be queuing up the road to get in. And on Sunday night, we'd have live music as well. So you'd get an older crowd, but still queuing to get in. It was such a busy pub. So it was one of the first pubs in the area that you really needed the door staff. You needed to police it, to make sure you kept the idiots out, and provided a safe drinking environment for everyone. But that's sort of 20 years ago, and the door has changed so much in 20
Well, we talked about how on the last one, how the SIA and how a lot of the doormen now, it's about ticking boxes, pass the exam, tick the boxes, and you're in the job. Then you get the badge, but that doesn't mean what.
I mean, the SIA really, because some of the guys that were working the door were there to start fights, meet girls. They were there just to abuse that position of power that they believed it gave them. And so the SIA, I agreed with it in part, that it took some of the meatheads out of the game.
Yeah.
But it didn't just take the bad apples. It took the good apples. It took the guys who could actually walk the walk and talk the talk. These guys who could, real tough men, but if they had a criminal record for an assault 20 years ago in their youth, then that's it. They'd never get a badge. So it took the guys who grew up fighting, not necessarily martial artists, but guys who were just naturally hard guys, tough boys. I mean, some of the nicest people I know are some of the hardest people you will ever wish to meet. They've got nothing to prove to anybody. And these are the guys, you'd want to go to the pub and see this guy on the door because you'd think, I feel safe.
Yeah, I always found it silly, really, because they've done that with the police force and the military as well, where if you've got a criminal record for violence, they won't let you in. And yet you're the sort of guy who you're no longer daft, young and stupid. You've matured a bit, but you've still got the skills and you've still got the mindset. And you know what criminals and violent people look like because you were one. So you're the perfect person to have in the job.
It's like poacher turned gamekeeper.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. Yeah, if you want a good gamekeeper, you get a poacher.
absolutely.
And the best gamekeepers, I used to go to Scotland a lot with my kids, and the gamekeepers that I'd meet up there had all been poachers, because they tell you, and they were quite proud of it. They were bloody good poachers. And of course, their job now was to catch poachers, and they knew all the tricks.
Exactly.
So,
I mean,
so
again, I've taken some doormen under my wing as well, especially when I was head doorman. And right, if you're going to do this and this and this, you are not longer. You can't work for me. I need someone who can do this. I mean, I didn't employ necessarily the hardest men, but they were loyal and they would always have your back, and they would agree to the sort of principles that I'd imposed.
Yeah.
And it was about talking it out. If you don't like the look of it, it doesn't come in. If you can't pull it out in an hour's time, it doesn't come in. You know, it's about dealing with the threat rather than dealing with the incident.
Yeah, yeah. So it's about having it's a balance, isn't it? It's like a balance between somebody who's mentally tough as well as physically strong. Like you said, that doesn't mean they're the hardest blokes in the valleys. They're just they're sensible and dependable.
Yeah, and you don't want people on the door who are arrogant and confrontational. You want people on the door who are confident, and that's completely different. You know, it's when I was just, you know, if it come to the point where someone's leaving, and as you alluded to, you know, I'm not exactly big of stature, but then you would say, right, this is it, this is what's happening, you are leaving, and I would just lean forward and sometimes and just say, look, there's an easy way or hard way, pick one, and what you're doing is psychologically you're putting doubt. I mean, they've obviously grown a set through drink, and you put that little seed of doubt, easy way or hard way, and you're like, what? You heard, easy way or hard way. You go in, so pick one, and straight away their bollocks are starting to shrink. They're starting to shell.
Yeah,
come on.
And
again, they would like, can I finish my drink? I mean, you know yourself, sabotage. As you spoke about the book earlier, jab them in the throat with it, poke them in the eye. Anything in anyone's hand instantly becomes a weapon, whether it's a rolled up newspaper, an umbrella, a glass.
Yeah.
So you would say to them, I said, well, no, you can't finish your drink, but I'll get you a plastic one. Give them a little squishy. So that's a psychological, they think, well, I've got a victory. I got my point.
Exactly.
So they've rescued their point. Yeah. Come on in. See you next week. Don't be such a bellend. So
you're giving them a get out.
Wander down the road with their squishy. So you've given them, they think they've got a victory. And what you've done, you've just completely diffused the situation. You've kept a weapon out of their hand, and you've let them wander down the street with their
and this is the problem you see with some doormen that I've seen in pubs. I don't go to pubs a lot, but I've seen some bad doormen, and they stand on the door looking arrogant, which scares punters away. If I was the landlord of that pub, I wouldn't want him on my door. And then they've got an opportunity to calm a confrontation down, as you say, by saying, yeah, you can finish your drink, but you're going to have it in a plastic thing. There you go, mate. And I want you to drink that now, and then you'll be on your way. All right? But they don't. They go, no, you're fucking not having it. No, you're not. And it's like, do you want to? And it's about the door. Some of the doormen I've seen, it's about their ego being too big for the job.
Absolutely.
And you can't have a big ego. That's what comes across when you're talking about door work. And Graham, when he was talking about door work. In fact, all of the guys I know who've done the doors, people that I've known through martial arts and do martial arts, strangely enough, all say the same thing. You know, it's about not having a big ego. It's about being able to control the situation, to do your job, which is to get them out of the building safely without disrupting the rest of the punters. Because as a doorman, you're not there to bounce people. I hate the term bouncer. You're not there to bounce people. You're there to actually make people have a good night. I think you said that in the first episode anyway. You were talking about, you know, my job is there to ensure that everybody has a great night.
It is.
And if there are one or two arseholes, you spot them, or you don't even let them in the first place. I remember.
I mean, my philosophy was, you'd either have your biggest guy on the front door, your meet and greet monkey, but everyone who came in, they would say good evening, hello, and everyone who left, say goodbye. So you're leaving a lasting impression.
Absolutely.
The first impression, I mean, because we had some big guys, and they would stand there, and people walk in, intimidated, and they would, good evening, come on in, and they straight away call it doing a polar bear, break the ice, you know. Or you'd have your best guy on the front door, which obviously I was the head doorman, so that was me, and you would vet everybody, you would monitor everyone, you would do the stop and searches as and when you thought they were necessary. Not everybody, and again, it's as I've spoken about, it's taking psychological psychological control, anchoring people as well, which I found such a useful tool. And the way I used to do it, people would walk in, and you know, we on the weekend we'd always have a queue to get in there. People would be queuing, sometimes half hour to get in the pub. So they would be desperately trying to get in. But if sometimes people walk up, and if I was unsure of them, I would just say, I'd look behind me. I'd say, hang on a minute. I'd either put my hand, if they were close enough, I'd put my hand on their chest, just hang on a minute, or just put up the fence, put the barrier. So hang on a minute. I'd look around. Yeah, it's all good. Come on in. And as they walk past, I go, give them a little tap on the shoulder and say, enjoy your evening. Oh, thank you, thank you. You know, so again, you've anchored them in two positions. So later on in the night, if there was an altercation, you would go in, and instead of saying, and again, it's being careful with your words. What's the problem? I mean, people, especially drunk people, will find 10 problems to every solution. You know, it's just the nature of the beast. So you walk over and you touch them on the shoulder and you say, everything all right here? And straight away, because when they're coming in, you anchor them, you stop them there. What you've done is made them subordinate to you. You've stopped them, and so they've paused, and it's what it's given you is authority over them. So they've paused, and it's only for a moment. You're looking around and pretending this. Yeah, it's all good, and you go, have a good night. But it's giving you that authority over them. So later, when you touch them on the shoulder and say, "Everything all right here?" and it's just too much.
It's the use of language as well, you see. Like,
exactly, it's the use of language.
How you say, rather than saying, "Is there a problem?"
Yeah, like, what's the problem?
Well, why using a negative word like that when you can say, "Is everything okay?" You know, and absolutely, these are the tiny things that people don't even recognize. You know, people who've bad doorman, for example, and just human beings generally. Language is such an important tool. It's how we communicate. The non-verbal stuff, that the physiology, the touching, the gestures, the looking, all of this is the physiological aspect. Then the non-verbal, and then you've got obviously the words you use, and you've got to be careful what you say to people. The tonality, the speed and rate at which you speak. You know, this is stuff that obviously we don't. You know, this is not my podcast, but you know that you're outlining quite a lot of fundamental principles to good communication, which applies not just to the door, but right across the board.
Absolutely.
You know, like when you're communicating with customers, you know, when you're out there doing deals to get business in, you know, like we say, you've got your own company, an engineering company in Cumbraen, and you went through a particularly tough patch when companies were closing down when we had the crash, 2009. I remember we were talking about that. And it was more or less you were probably the only one left in the valley at that time. I don't know how true that is, but
yeah, it wasn't far off. I mean, there's a lot of our competitors in the area. We sort of survived them, but again, it's about recognizing that sort of work is now gone. You've got to specialize in something else that people will need. So
having adaptability.
Yeah, we had to adapt, and we adapted well, which has kept us going. You know,
and how much of your martial arts, if any, the time you worked on the doors, all of this sort of stuff, make you better at what you do now? Like, i.e., run a company?
All of it. It's about keeping control, and that's what it's all about. It's about control. It's about having inner peace. It's about being in a situation, whether it's in a business meeting in Germany, which made me late for a show when you had to referee.
Yeah, when I had to referee.
in a business meeting there, it's about being in a, you know, hang on a minute, I got company.
Going.
Yeah, lock the gate.
Right, the gate locked.
Yeah, lock him up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be another while. Yeah.
All right.
Cheers. Sorry for that.
So right, there's production going on, isn't there? Because you're in the office at the moment, obviously.
Yeah, I'm in the office in work. Is one of the boys.
Saturday morning. Yeah, Saturday lunchtime.
They're just leaving now to get them to lock the main gate on the way out.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously we get a lot of travellers around here, and they love scrap metal, and there's a lot of.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. You got plenty of that.
There's a lot of scrap metal outside, and they get their mitts on it.
Did you want to lock up, and then I can pause this? You can go and check.
Yeah, if you can do that, yeah.
I'll pause it, and you go and lock up your factory, and we'll come back on in a second. Go on then.
Where do you at?
Hello, we're back again. Have you locked your factory up?
Yeah, got to keep it secure.
Oh, no, fair enough. Right. So we've been talking about how having
Again, how the martial arts has benefited me in every aspect of my life, whether it's working the door, business meetings, on the street, in the ring. It's about having that controlling yourself. And again, I always refer to it as using the top 2 inches.
yeah,
Like some people have called Thai boxing the science of 8 limbs, but it's not. It's the science of 9 limbs. You've got to use this, train hard, fight easy. These sort of sayings are all true, but you've got to use this,
yeah,
again, why fight hard when you can fight easy? It's
yeah, yeah.
in situations, picking your battles, and the same on the door. You would, always keep control of yourself by using your brain. Always control yourself. And again, when you go into a situation and it's volatile, like I said, when you're fighting for British titles, world titles, if you can keep control of yourself in that environment, because again, it's not about losing your temper. Once you've lost your temper, you've lost control of yourself.
Oh, you've lost it, yeah.
By extension, whatever situation you're in. So it's about keeping that control, keeping that, picking your battles, keeping the control.
And that applies a lot in negotiation, doesn't it? When you
absolutely, yeah. When someone's, in a negotiation, you've agreed a contract with someone, and then they want to move the goalposts, basically take the piss out of you. You've got to draw a line and stand your ground. Sometimes you've got to know when to step back. Right? Yeah, we'll concede.
the same as sparring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's the same as
exactly the same principle, isn't it? And
yeah.
It's about because at the moment in business, I know you look on LinkedIn and you listen to people talk about business, and resilience is the big word at the moment. It's not mindfulness anymore. That one's last year. That's all passé. It's all about resilience. And it's funny because I'm thinking, well, that's what boxers do. You get knocked down, you get back up. You know what I mean? And all of those skills are linked to what we do as martial artists. The ones who stay with it for the most of their lives are the ones who have been knocked back, get up, been knocked down, get up, been knocked down, get up, because that's the nature of the game, isn't it? And if you don't want to get knocked down, it's like I say to the guys, new guys will go, oh, I've got a bruise on my legs. I go, yep, welcome to Thai boxing. You don't make an excuse. You don't go, oh no, I'm so sorry. That won't ever happen again. You go, that's just the first one.
I think everyone, and I wish I had myself, I wish I'd lost my first fight. I think everyone should possibly lose their first fight, get that monkey off your back. There's so much emphasis put on winning. My first fight, I won it second round, knockout, knee to the body.
Yeah.
Took the guy to the ropes. As he come off the ropes, stuck a long knee in, straight in. He was on the, and as he went back to the ropes, I thought, he's gone. Stepped aside, he was down. And he was on the canvas for about 5 minutes. And that sounds brilliant. But I always make sure I tell my students this. The opening 10 seconds of that fight, I had a standing 8 count.
Yeah.
I threw a kick, my guard was down, and the guy just absorbed the kick, boom, hit me with his left hook. I was like, anyone get the license plate of that? From that moment, my guard was always there. And when I was kicking, it was always there. That was the best lesson I'd ever got taught.
Yeah.
But like I said, I learned so much more from my losses. But I think people put so much emphasis on winning, but there's a lot more to the fight game than just winning. Like I said, my best fight was that Dutch boy up in Manchester. Gave away 6 kilos ridiculously, and at the weigh-in when I said, I've done the work, I'll fight him. And it wasn't arrogance, it wasn't ego, that was confidence. I've trained hard for this, I'll fight him.
It's a Welsh thing, you see, because I've got Nathan who used to train with me in Birmingham. And when, and he fought on my show in Birmingham a few years back now, which is on YouTube. It's a brilliant knockout. And he was fighting a lad who's 8 kilos heavier than him. Typical skinny Cardiff boy. He just goes, he says to me, I said, well, you can't fight now. And he was absolutely gutted, and he was more than ready for the fight. And me and a couple of the other fighters, we all got together with him. And I said, right, I'm going to take the responsibility for this. Because I was convinced he could win. Technically, he was better. So it was just down to what the judges would see. I never even dreamed that he would knock the guy out and injure him, But so much power and speed and technique. This was the thing. It wasn't brute force. It was technical. And he knocked the guy out in the second round. I mean, it wasn't your traditional knockout by hitting him in the jaw. It was a body shot to the ribs and the spine, which had been softened by the knee and the teep. And the poor lad, didn't get up for 8 minutes, 9 minutes. He was down for. They had 2 paramedics in, and to be fair, you know, he went to the neutral corner and he's standing, and he's doing that, and then he looked, and he realised he'd badly injured the guy, so he went over to see him. And I said, no, keep away from there until a referee tells you it's safe. But he was genuinely concerned. And that's another good thing, you know?
Yeah, and you find that amongst fighters. Like I said, there's honesty amongst fighters.
Yeah.
And you don't showboat. I mean, I've ref fights, and the one guy's hit the other guy down, and I'm thinking, oh, he's down, he's out, he's not going to make the count. And the other guy's running around the ring, jumping. I'm like, neutral corner. So after 20 seconds, the guy then goes to neutral corner. This guy's got his win back. He's back on his knees. He's up. He survives the 8 count. And so the last time this happened, he actually went on to knock out his opponent the next round. And I said that fight would have been over last round if you'd listened to the ref.
Yeah.
And again, that's a good thing about, I think, doing the referees and judges courses for fighters. I think if anyone's got aspirations of fighting, do these courses, understand. You know, this is a competition.
Yeah. It's a sport. And if you stick to the rules, you can do very well out of it. But if you're offside, then and you don't know the offside rule, then you know. And Thai boxing is full of those as well. And I go to great pains to you know, as soon as you knock them down the canvas, get to that neutral corner as fast as you can, because the referee will not start the count until he sees you standing there. So you need him to get the run to that corner. And it was funny because Nathan hit the guy. He went down. He looked at me. And I went, and he went straight over the neutral corner. And then he was standing in the neutral corner looking like that. And that's when Sean, the referee, just went, it's over. And then he was like, and he still stayed in the neutral corner. Genuinely, he didn't know what to do, he said. I was, but we've moved on a bit back to Thai boxing now. So we're going to talk about why you give up the doors. Because I'm, you know.
It changed so much. I mean, when I started, I mean, this was 20 years ago. Like I said, 5 years now, I've given up the doors. And it changed so much. You know, in 20 years ago, there was the biggest cause of fights was arm wrestling, football, and women. You know, my missus, and that was, and it'd be one-on-one, and the like I said, the loser would come in, buy the winner a pint, and write your banned for a week, and that's how it was. But then fast forward 20 years, I mean, everything now, and especially in the Welsh valleys, everything is all drugs. They've got a massive cocaine epidemic in the South Wales valleys at the moment. And it's either people selling it, dealing it, or taking it. And that is a constant cause of fights. But of course, it's not one-on-one anymore. It's 5-on-1. And then these people will hold a grudge. They'll come back a month later, and 5 will beat the one person up, and then he'll go and get 6 of his mates, and so the 6 will beat one of them up, and it's constant tit for tat. I mean, we had to become experts in sort of drugs. You know, what does this drug do? I mean, cocaine. It either gives you false sense of euphoria, and I love everybody for 30 minutes, or fists of steel for 30 minutes. So you had to identify what are they taking? What does this drug to do to someone? Is it amphetamine? Is it cocaine? I mean, I'd much rather have a pub full of stoned people than piss people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, drink, I mean, it's the most socially accepted drug in our society, and it destroys more families than heroin. You know, so you had to understand what drugs are these people taking, and what's it going to do to them. And again, we'd start doing bag searches, and this was bizarre. We would find, you know, the little Kinder eggs. Yeah. The little yellow, the toy comes in.
Yeah.
Well, if you're searching through someone's bag and you'd find that, or search their pockets, you find that. And that's what people used to, because girls would hide the cocaine in their bras, so we couldn't.
Right.
So the dealers would have these young girls, you know, 18, 19, muling from. They would carry all the drugs on them, and then be back before the toilets, then dealing. The dealers would organise the sale. Then a girl would then follow another girl to the toilet, and
that's how they do the exchange.
Yeah, but we would find these yellow Kinder eggs, and what it was in there, it was either a bag of cocaine. I mean, they got wise to it, and again, their missus would smuggle the drugs in for them. But in there would be either a wrap of cocaine or a couple of gram of cocaine, and a little length of McDonald's straw. So what they would do, they would use the straw then to snort the drugs. Because, I mean, nowadays they bump it off keys. It's called bumping, but that destroys the septum really, really quick. So they would use these McDonald's straws because it gets it up past the septum straight into the nasal cavity. I mean, enterprising, you know, it's bizarre. But we actually, in the ladies' toilets in one of the pubs I worked in, there was a cupboard that they had some of the toiletries in, the spare toilet rolls and some cleaning products and whatever. And we went to work one, and I had a zero tolerance for the drugs. And people were getting, and I'm like, how are they getting it? I'm searching everyone. Obviously, we didn't have female doorman then. It was a male only. It was, not that we're misogynistic, just women didn't want to do it because it was a job. You know, so we couldn't physically body search, but sometimes the landlady would stand on the door with us, and we would say, right, I would search her, and she'd ask her to be searched, and then the person knew they had drugs and would turn around and walk away. Yeah. So we would prevent it by not, you know, they refusing the search, refuse them entry.
Yeah.
I got to work one night and I was doing the rounds, making sure everything was nice and tidy, and walked into the ladies' toilets, did the rounds, and the cleaning cupboard was locked. And so halfway through the night, we needed to get some extra toiletries. So the girls behind the bar didn't have the key, the landlord and landlady weren't on site. So we had to smash the lock to get it off. But what we found was a load of drugs in the cupboard. What these dealers have been doing was coming to the pub early before the doorman were on duty, and in the afternoon, hiding their drugs in with the toilet rolls, and then they put their own lock on the cupboard. So when they would go in there, they would open the lock, open the cupboard. What do you want? Like a little drug ladder, and then lock it back up.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, enterprising.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to admire the bottle, and you got to admire the sort of the knowledge, the skill set, as it were. You know,
like I said,
very good.
These criminals are as smart as the people. Again, it's the poacher gamekeeper. These criminals are as smart as the guys policing it.
Yeah. And then you get somebody who's passed their exams for the SIA who hasn't got a clue about all this stuff, and they're working the job.
We have to learn this on the job, you know.
Yeah, they don't teach that stuff on the SIA course, do they?
I think there's absolutely nothing to do with door work in there. I think it's just a duty responsibility of people entering and leaving the establishment and filling a logbook in, and that is it.
And first aid, I think, isn't it?
A bit of first aid, and that's it. You know.
Yeah. So that's why you came off, basically, because of the prevalence of drugs.
The drugs was a turning point, because you were getting people turning up that most of the boys couldn't handle one-on-one because of whatever drugs they were taking. We had a boy once. We kicked him out. He'd come back later and threw a boulder through the window, and he'd thrown this boulder probably about 4 meters through a window in the pub. It took 2 of us to lift it up. So he'd thrown this boulder through the window, and he was gone. He was like Linford. He was on his toes. And when it came, you know, to pick this boulder up, the ex-Marine guy, he went to pick it up. He said, I can't pick it up. He said, this boy was no bigger than me. So whatever sort of disco biscuits he was on, God only knows.
Disco biscuits.
But the changing point for me is when we first started working, we worked symbiotically with the police. They were very grateful to have us on the doors.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the one door in Cumbranig, worked a few. And when they would turn up, thank goodness we got some good doormen here. Because we never hurt anyone, you know. If we had to throw you out, 9 times out of 10, you deserved it. You know, we very seldom made any mistakes, and we never beat anyone up. And if any of the doormen did, right, you're off the job, you're gone. You don't work with me again. Because I wouldn't tolerate it. I mean, I actually sacked one boy halfway through the night because he was about to kick off because he had caused a load of problems. I said, right, you're done. And the crowd, they're all, what? I said, no, you're done. And they're like, what? I said, no, you. Get your coat, you're done, you're out. And that stopped the whole situation kicking off by sacking the protagonist. You know, you're here to stop all this, and from afar now, you're out. But the police would turn up, right, what's happened? We chucked this boy out, he's done this, X, Y, Z. Okay, he's either in the back of the wagon or he's had a caution and he's left to wander off on his own. But as time went on, they didn't have our backs anymore, less and less. We had, me personally, I had 2 incidents with two edge weapon attacks. The one was a boy it was a private party. It was a 21st birthday party. I was working the door at a private club, and this guy had come in, and he'd been a right muppet right from the get-go. But he was picking on with this one boy. The one boy he had on the door, he was a big old lump. He was a prop forward, And this guy was just had a beeline. He wanted to fight this doorman for want of a better name. But I couldn't work it out because this guy was very slight. You know, he looked small even compared to me. So when it finally happened and the doorman had grabbed him, his hand went straight in his pocket. Like I said, we always worked in teams of 2. So I grabbed him, figured forward, locked him up, and Chuck has got him. I mean, Chuck's a big prop forward. He's got him, right, you're going out. And he's literally walking him out with his feet off the floor, you know. And I said, and Chuck's like, oh, don't worry, I got him. I said, no, I said, I'm coming with you. So I had this guy's arm locked up. So as we get outside, Chuck put him down and literally put him on it. As soon as he had on his feet, I took his arm in his pocket, shook it, and he dropped this, it was like a craft knife, but it had a scalpel blade in it.
Yeah.
Said, it would have slashed you up then, Chuck. And I said, you wouldn't even have felt it.
No.
So we confiscated the weapon, didn't have a sharp spot, so I just left it in my pocket. So we shoot this boy off. 10 minutes later, the police turn up and we explained the incident and the boy's there. And we thought they were there for this boy. They were there to get the weapon off us.
Oh yes, you told me about this. They were coming to get the weapon. They had no interest in arresting him at all, did they? The fact that you'd stolen his property.
Yeah, and they said if he wants, he can press charges for theft.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just by luck that I was with Chuck, as such. So we got this boy out, and I said, well, why has he got this after hours? And he said, I'm an art student. I've just come from college. And they said it's a tool that's indicative to his trade. He's allowed it back. And I said to the cop, I said, really? And the cop he's like, yeah, you've got to give it back. If you haven't got a sharps box, we didn't have. I said, well, can I give it to you? He said, we can't. He said, otherwise you'll press charges for theft against us because we've just taken a tool off him. So I gave it back to the cop because I refused to give it back to this kid. They give it to this kid. The kid jumps in a taxi, goes off to the next, goes into Newport for another night, carry on the night out. And that was one of the changing points for me.
Yeah. That set in motion the whole idea that this. Yeah, just
like I said, my badge was coming up for renewal, and I'm like, do I really want to do this for another 3 years?
No.
And this was one of the contributing factors to the answer being no. The second one, which is a little bit worse, we had a boy in the pub, and he was a local villain as such, but petty crimes, car thefts, burglary, you know. He was just a petulant knobhead, to be honest. But he was what we call an SAS boy, sunbeds and steroids. And again,
sunbeds and steroids. I love that.
In the Welsh valleys, like I said, there's cocaine and there's steroids. It's a massive epidemic, and police have been unable to stop either. So this boy was he fancied his chances when he thought he was a bit tasty. So he was in the pub one night and created a situation, and he got escorted out. And again, I walked him out, and off he went. And I said to the boy on the door, I said, he's not fit. And as he walked away, he had this swagger about him. He looked back, and I said, he's not done. I said, he'll be back tonight. I said, if he comes back, he is not coming in at all. Not even on the premises, not even on the sun terrace. He does not come in. So 10, 15 minutes later, I was, again, because I would work the door, and I would circle the boys, so you're not stuck in the same spot all night. And again, it's about psychologically controlling people. If someone's at the front door and they want to come in and they're too drunk and you're explaining it to them, you have sort of a couple of minutes with them, 5 minutes with them, and then you'll walk off and someone else will stand there, and then they'll tell the same story to that person. Then he goes away, and then someone else will come there. So after 15 minutes of explaining the same thing, they get bored and walk away. So psychologically, it just exhausted this person, and they're gone. So I said to the boys, he does not come back in. And I'd done a walk around the pub, and every now and again you walk around. Not that we needed to collect glasses, we had glass collectors, but you walk around because it puts you in. People, all right, how's it going? Good night, and you get a feel for any pockets of altercation or potential pockets of it. So anyway, this boy, I get back on the front door, and the boy gives me a nudge. He said, "You're right, he's back." And the landlord was out there talking to him, and I'm like, oh. And he would constantly do this. Like I said earlier, you don't keep a dog and back yourself. You're paying us money to deal with this. So he's out there, and the boy kept touching his back. He kept putting his hand behind his back, and I thought, that's... So I'm straight out, and as soon as I get there, you could see he was like a rabbit in headlights, and he'd obviously come there for a reason. And what he did then, he pulled out a sharpened screwdriver, about 4 inches long. Yeah. And I think he came back. I think he came back probably to stab me but the landlord presented himself as with an easy target.
Yeah, much easier.
So as he pulls it out, and I'm straight away, you're looking at how he's holding it, what he's got. Right, it's a screwdriver, but it's modified. It's an edge weapon. And you're looking, and he's looking at the landlord, but then he's looking at me. So he's torn straight away. He's paused. So I'm thinking, right, it's given us time. Is he going to go? And he made this ridiculous lunge. Obviously, he wanted to stab me. So he made this ridiculous lunge towards me. Luckily, I stripped the weapon. Unfortunately for him, I broke his wrist in 2 places and his nose. But obviously, I broke his nose first. And I held him there then, and I held him with my hand on the back of his head, pushing his broken nose into the patio, and just this, and I could feel it when it went over the wrist. And it takes a surprising amount of pressure to break the wrist.
Oh, yeah.
I can feel it crunching, and he is yelping. So we probably held him there 4 or 5 minutes tops. The police turn up. They turn up, and the ambulance turns up. Then the police turn up. They ring the ambulance. Paramedics turn up. So they've got him in the back of the wagon. Then they transfer him to the ambulance, and then the cop comes back up, and he asks me, the other doorman, some witnesses, the landlord, what happened. And he's going, well, the thing is, if he wants to press charges, and I said, pardon me? He said, yeah, if he wants to press charges for wrongful imprisonment because you held him here against his will, he can. And I was completely bewildered. My jaw must have hit the floor. And I said, you're joking me. And this cop, I wouldn't come round. So I sort of knew him personally. And he said, yeah. I said, you're joking. I said, it was an edge weapon. He said, yeah, but by the time the CPS get hold of it, they'll downgrade it to intent to burgle. I said, what do you mean? Well, he's got a tool on him after hours. I said, but it's an edge weapon. Luckily, the laws have changed now.
They have, yeah.
To any edge weapon now is a custodial, which is great. But they said, yeah, but it's a sharpened screwdriver. I said, yeah, but it's a weapon. I said, if he'd stabbed me or the landlord, you'd have been here putting a chalk outline around us and a tent up. I said, luckily, I was able to deal with the situation because, the guy his attack was clumsy and useless, thankfully. But that could have been so easily gone the other way. And when the cop said that, I was, you knew then, and not so much the cop, but you could see he was like,
yeah, he didn't want to have to say that, did he?
Didn't want to, yeah, and you could see when he's saying it to me, he said, the thing is, CPS will get hold of it, and it'll be downgraded to intent to burgle. He'll have a slap on the wrist. He won't even get a fine, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, when the police don't have your back, you're there policing the pubs for them, by dealing with the riffraff and the dross of humanity. This kid was a dross. I mean, this boy then, 2 years after that, went on to rape a girl. And if the police had locked him up then, or rehabilitated him, or done some sort of punishment, then
that might not have
I think by getting away with that was a green light for him to, move on from petty crimes. And obviously when he raped the girl, he got done, and he spent a long time detained at Her Majesty's leisure.
Good.
Well, I think that was poor policing. But again, the cop, he was saying to me, I'm sorry.
I've heard this from.
At the end, he said, you're lucky he doesn't want to press charges.
I've heard this from police officers, lads who've trained with me, my son, the copper, and to a certain extent, the police's hands are tied as well, and they're in the horrendous position of trying to please everybody, including the CPS, obviously. I'm not going to say what I've heard it called, but there you go. Libelous.
Criminal Protection Service.
Yeah, there you go. You said it.
There you go. I can say it.
I've heard police officers say that,
Yeah. And there was another incident.
But it has changed a little bit now. But I still think it's erring on the side of. You've got to have laws. You've got to have laws. You've got to have. And powerful laws, but as we've seen with this pandemic, you give people the opportunity to make up their own minds, and they don't know what to do. You've got to have people in a position of power to say, no, this is what you're going to do. Yeah. A bit like, being the director of a company. The buck stops with you. You tell your staff what to do, within a certain framework. And if you've got good communication skills, they'll do it. Absolutely. It's the same on the door. You speak authoritatively, not as an arrogant. People will listen. But and again, you always get, you know, the bad apple in there, who's going to mess around with the system. But unfortunately, what they've done is they've just gone and said, right, we're going to be really liberal about everything now. And
you can see this carver. I mean, I dealt with him many times. We chuck people out, and he's like, "Oh, what's this one done? He's done this, right? Back, you know, chuck him in the back of the wagon."
yeah,
And now it's oh, we got do you need first aid? You need counselling? It's ridiculous. I mean, we had another incident. A girl bottled another girl, and as she went back, because the DJ had shouted teddy bear, which is a code. If there was any trouble on the dance floor that we hadn't seen it, and there was no doorman up there, he would shout teddy bear. Because if you shout fight on the dance floor, everyone rushes to the dance floor.
Yeah, of course I do.
He would shout teddy bear. So I'm sprinting from the door to the dance floor, and this girl's hit this girl, and straight away her eye is swollen shut. The white of her eye is instantly gone blood red, and she's coming back for the second swing. So I stripped the weapon off her, locked her up, and she's gone out the door backwards. We've given this other girl first aid. And then when the police turned up, and he goes, yeah, he said, the thing is, he said, lucky it didn't break, but unfortunately it didn't break. So by the time it gets to court, it'll be downgraded to common assault. And I said, she just bottled it. I said, the intent was to, you know, she's hit her in the eye. I said, and this girl's eye was shut for 2 weeks, and bloodshot. The white eye was bloodshot for a month. And that's the force of the impact.
And of course, she might be traumatized by the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And never be able to go out again.
Yeah, but the girl had done it, was so blasé about it, and the cop said, well, unluckily it didn't break. Well, like, if it was broken, she'd be blind. Yeah, but then we could press charges for Section 8, it'd be Section 18. But otherwise, it'll be downgraded to common assault. You know, if you go into the pub and touch someone, that's common assault.
Common assault, yeah.
And it did someone with a bottle was categorized in the, I was bewildered. You know, when the law isn't backing you up and protecting you, you know,
that's the time to leave the door.
That was the time I'm like, right, it's time to tap out. I thought I had another couple of months to run, so I didn't drop him in the mire. I put my time out. When my badge is due for renewal, I tapped out. You know, when the police force and the laws are supposed to protect society aren't protecting you anymore. You know,
but it's like the fight game. You've got to know when it's time to give up. You know, you go, okay. As much as you don't want to, you sort of go, yeah, but now it's time to give up, move on to something different, isn't it? You know? Yeah. But it's still an experience. The thing is, having worked all those years, 15 years on the doors, it gives you a different insight when you're teaching things like self-protection and awareness. And you'll have students who are more likely, I guess, to listen to you because you've actually had a hands-on experience. It's not knowledge from another teacher or knowledge via books, you know, which is what a lot of martial arts, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of martial artists will do. They'll rely on, well, my teacher told me that this would work on the street. And then you extrapolate that back and go, how many fights did he have? Well, none, I don't think. Where did he learn it? Well, from his teacher who learned it. Yeah. Where did he learn it? Well, from a teacher who did, well, I don't know. So, because as you have as well, I'm sure I've seen people teaching, you know, self-defense, and it just horrifies you.
Oh, it's horrendous. There's a guy who teaches self-defense at the local authority, and he has a function hall in the gym where I train, and I was sat watching him one day, and he said, can I help you? I said, oh, I'm just curious to see what you're teaching, if you don't mind, just see if I can pick up any tips. He said, well, I can't let you watch me. He said, because I teach death moves in my class. I'm like, oh, all right. I said, oh, so sorry about that. I said, no worries. I said, so I went into the back room and I was watching on the CCTV, and what he was teaching them was absolute garbage. You know, even the just the basic awareness, putting up the fence, it was terrible. And this guy was getting paid handsomely. These people, their companies have paid a lot of money to have these, NHS workers, care workers, and it was, you know, people. It's
false confidence. I mean, I used to get them coming into the gym. They'd done some of the courses, and I'm sure you've had them in your class as well, where they said, "Oh, I've done a self-defense course where I work in the NHS. You know, I'm a frontline worker. I'm psychiatric nurses, particularly."
Yeah.
And they'd show me some of the stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh dear me." And you know, you don't want to say anything because you can see that they've invested a lot of a lot of time, not just physical time, but emotional time in thinking that they can now deal with this
You're a little bit more
psychiatrically violent individual, you know, and I mean a psychopath, for example, you know, somebody who will not give up and is on drugs as well, obviously, medication, which distorts reality in some cases. So they have incredible power. And they believe that they're unstoppable, and in many cases they are.
Yeah, that example of the boy throwing the boulder through the window.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, it's just incredible what people can do. I had a friend who was a police officer in Birmingham, and they had a horrendous night. It took 6 police officers to stop this drunk who was also on drugs, steroids and cocaine as well as alcohol. And the guy literally would not stop fighting. He injured 3 of the police officers, and they literally just had to leave him in the cell. They had to run away and leave him locked in the cell. And he came round in the morning. His head had been split open with asp, you know, the extendable batons. His knees had been smashed up, where the police officers had been smashing his legs. And they had to get a doctor to come in. And my mate was like, he said, in the morning, he was like the biggest apologetic baby you could ever imagine. He said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know what I was doing." And they were like, "You fought 6 of us." And he was injured, but he never felt it at the time. They were hitting him and there was just nothing, you know. One of my students, he said, we just kept hitting him, was nothing would send him down.
That's it. I mean, it's cocaine and what they're cutting it with, you just
don't.
Well,
this is it. You don't know. Mixed with steroids and other things and alcohol. And to be honest,
if they've taken cocaine and they've drunk alcohol, those 2 drugs will combine then to create a 3rd drug. And if you add steroids into the mix, that then it combines and it snowballs. You know, they all then start to react with each other and create different drugs.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, cocaine, fist of steel for 30 minutes because it's designed as an anesthetic. And they just don't feel the pain.
So after all the violence that we've been talking about, you also, just to start wrapping things up, because we've done over an hour now, you meditate.
Pretty much every day.
Yeah. How did that happen? Can you tell us anything about that? Where did that come from?
It's because I was getting home from work, and then you were going training, and there was no sort of rest time or downtime in between. I know some boys go home and have an hour on the sofa, but that's not for me.
Yeah.
That's their preparation for training. And they come into training all stewed, sleep scars on their face. And I was thinking I need a way to sort of switch off from, take your director's hat off, put your instructor's hat on. There was a way I needed to sort of ground myself, to sort of equalize everything around me, deal with the stresses and the turbulence and tribulations of the day, and then to be able to go training with the right mindset. And that's how it started for me. Same as everyone else, I started off, meditation I found it so difficult to start with. And then you get the cassettes. This is going back in the day, cassettes. And you do the guided meditation. But all I found with that, it was really, that would just put me to sleep. It's the guided meditation, the chimes, the water running, and the soft, gentle voice. And it didn't really work for me. So I had to sort of cherry pick. I had to go around try a few different techniques, and then find the one that sort of suits me. And to the point now where I can pretty much go in, sit down. I don't like to lie down when I'm meditating. No. Eyes open usually, sometimes eyes closed, but eyes open. Once I get my breathing down, and it's almost it's instant. It's like you've done something so often, you can just go to it. Sort of 20 minutes of meditation. It's like microwave sleep. It's like 10 hours of sleep. It's so restful, so invigorating. I find. So it's a way of tuning out, but tuning in as well. Yeah, tuning out. The dross, tuning out the sort of the wheat from the chaff. Is getting rid of the rubbish of the day, and reusing the good stuff of the day, and focusing. Helping. So it
allows you to stay focused.
Yeah. And again, it's like this going back to fighting training, to fight for 3 minutes, to keep your mind focused for 3 minutes.
I mean, it's the same thing, isn't it?
And especially when you're tired, when you're exhausted, the first thing to go is the mind. Concentration is always to go, which is why I'm always saying you've got to use that top 2 inches.
Top 2 inches, yeah.
You use it everywhere. You use it in work, you use it in the ring, in training, on the door, wherever it is in life. You need to engage the top 2 inches.
So I think
There's a name for your book.
I know I was going to say the top 2 inches. Well, that's probably what we're going to call this episode. So we'll finish it there.
Yeah.
It's another hour in series 1, episode 3. And I dare say we're going to come back and have a look at some other stuff that we'll discuss off mic, and then decide we need another one. So I just want to say thanks again. It's been fascinating to listen to the stories, and I'll catch up with you soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Cheers, Bob.
All right. Cheers, mate. Cheers.